infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
And just a few things before we get to this week's interview. Hello and welcome to my newest patrons over at patreon.com. Tahara Nolan, Paul Nagy, Joe Morris, Gerald McGee, Rosemary McKenzie, Bigfoot Society, Christy Heiser, Mark McCullough, Lisa Spinelli, Chris Guerrero, Rose Monarch, Emily Bowers, Benjamin Collins, Deb, Amanda Eames, Kiera, Kelly Crocker, and Rob Whitaker. Welcome aboard, guys. And Alpha shoutouts. Alphas are, of course, those pledging $20 or more over at patreon.com. Chris Guerrero, Patrick Ray, Nick Walker, Matthew Lacewell, Chad Ralston, Ted Cheever, Jake Dressel, Eric Garcia, Charles Mann, Heather Stockwell, Brian Beloga, Steve Alarcon, Stephen Bashore, John, William Cornell, Anthony Mikulski, Roy Daniel, Randy, Tyler DeMoney, Crystal Bowman, John Cavender, Sticky Soundzine, Karina, Eric Ribich, Josh Arthur, Andrew of Black Triangle Coffee, Maynard W., Azrael, Sean Kevin Jason, Nightwing, and Isis Fernandez. Now, the newest addition to patron-only content is iTF Live. This not only allows my patrons to watch me execute interviews live on video, but also ask questions of the guest themselves. And this is by either hopping on video with us live or via the chat room. We've done a couple of these by now, and they seem to be quite the hit, and they are extremely fun and interactive for everybody. So those will continue. All of the premium iTF content is immediately accessible, starting at just the $5 a month level. And then all other tiers will get you things like signed books, stickers, patches, and even one-on-one conversations with moi. And more, of course. So head to patreon.com and search Into the Fray and see which pledge level works for you. And help support a show that you love. Homepage for Into the Fray is intothefrayradio.com. There you will find all episodes, blog posts, the About page. You can order stickers if that's your thing. If you would be interested in coming on the show as a guest to share your sighting or encounter or encounters, please email me, Shannon, at intothefrayradio.com. And without further ado, here is this week's episode. We are covering a sighting that you and a friend had back in the 90s in Jupiter, Florida. Is that correct, Danny?
That is correct.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for getting in touch with me. The second I read your email, I knew I had to write you back and get you on because this is a very unique sighting.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I wanted to get this down on somewhere recorded, and I'm glad you gave me the opportunity.
So Jupiter, Florida, a very beautiful part of Florida, lots of beautiful places there. But just describe for folks, what side of Florida that's on, where that's at, and I mean, all of Florida is mostly the same as far as, landscape and the sorts of animals that are there. But just kind of describe Jupiter and where that's at for folks.
Well, Jupiter, I lived in a side street. There's a ton of side streets, and the main street would be Indiantown Road. It's considered Palm Beach County. It's like the last county in Palm Beach. Right next to the beach, maybe 5-minute drive from the beach. Other than that, palm trees, flat land. There is a giant canal that runs through there that has a lot of growth on each side. But pretty much I was living in a neighborhood, regular old neighborhood. I mean, right behind my house, in the backyard, there's a fence, and on the other side was a Chinese restaurant. It's very populated. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a regular old Florida neighborhood.
And I totally understand, not being able to pinpoint the exact year. That's no big deal. You said back in the 90s. Do you know around about how old you and your friend were at the time?
It was late 90s. So 98, 99. Because I remember around that time, everyone's talking about Y2K. And everyone was worried about Y2K. So I know it was around 98, 99. My age, well, I'm 44 now. I'm horrible at math, so...
It's funny how things like that...
My friend was older than me, though.
Okay, so he was a little older than you. Yeah, it's funny how things
he was...
like Y2K can help you remember kind of a roundabout year, because I am very much the same way. I will literally have like a 5, if not more, year net of casting with a lot of things. Not everything, but with a lot of things. I'm like, man, I am really bad at this, but I always have been. So I'm right there with you.
That helps me remember things. Yep, you're right.
All right, so 98 or 99. Well, yeah, set us up. Like, what were you guys doing? What time of day? All those good little points of interest.
Okay, so we were sitting. I was living with my family. The carport at one time was a carport, and actually put the slanted ceiling or roof. Then they had the wall. They added walls. They had a door, window, AC unit. So that was my room. So a lot of times, I was the kind of kid who always had friends coming in and out and everything, and I had, a private entrance, right? So me and my friend who lived next door he was renting a room out from his parents, a separated room, and we were sitting on 2 white plastic lawn chairs, our backs against the quote, carport, my room, facing into the driveway, the street, and then the houses across the street. That was our line of view. We had regular street lights, but we also had, what do you call that light that hits the floodlight? Big floodlight hitting down into the driveway. But it was so bright, it lit up like half the orange tree that was on our left. And it lit up a lot of the houses across the street. But then you also had the street lights that also helped. So we're just sitting there and we're just talking. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. I should say it was a neighborhood where it's not exactly wealthy. It was on the other side of that, poor people and stuff, and middle class poor. And we're sitting there, we're talking, and something caught my eye to the left top of me. I just looked up, and this thing was flying towards us, but above. And it flew about 9 feet, so a little bit above where the roof angled the lowest. And it actually cocked his head down to look at us as it flew by. And it disappeared. And at the same time, I look across the street, and there was another one doing the exact opposite direction, flying over the rooftop of the house across the street. So complete opposite. We looked at each other, and a bunch of curses came out. What the hell was that? What the? And I'm like, it looked like a pterodactyl, And he's from, my friend was Venezuelan. He had an accent. And he goes, what the heck is that? He didn't know what a pterodactyl was. And I was like, it's a dinosaur, like the dinosaurs, blah, blah, blah. We were like dumbfounded. We were quiet for a long time for no reason. We just didn't talk, just, I guess, thinking about it. That was it. It was, would you like me to describe what it looked like?
Yes, in as much detail as you can.
Sure. So the color was, I always say, like lighter paper brown color. There was no feathers. There were points to the wings. I didn't get to see the back part that much. I didn't see if there were legs sticking out or a tail, because by the time it went over, I saw the front, the middle, and then gone. Yeah, and it had spiky. It didn't have feathers at all. Kind of like a bat, but the wings were thicker. It seemed like it wasn't very thin skin over the bone structure. So as it flew by, the wingspan's about 5 feet, 4.5 feet, and the body was around 3.5 feet, something like that. And the thing that made me think pterodactyl the most, or pterosaur the most, was when it cocked down to look at us, you could see the protrusion coming from behind the head. I'd say maybe half a pencil long, sticking up from the back of the head. And it had the long beak. Yeah, I told people this, and they say, oh, you saw a blue heron or a crane. They're all over Florida. But the thing is with that is, I see blue herons and cranes fly over brightly lit intersections. And you can see from a distance, it's a crane. You actually look at it and go, oh, that was funny. It looks like a pterodactyl. And that's from a distance. I've seen it all the time. They fly at night over intersections. And this was only 9 feet or so above my head. So there was no way that was a bird of any kind. But yeah, it had the skin and had the points to the tips. Another thing I would like to add is, some people say, well, they got it wrong. That's not what pterosaurs look like. I do not know what to tell these people, because I saw what I saw. And if scientists and got it wrong, I don't know what to say. Another thing some people say, is remote control. So you got 2 remote control pterodactyls, no noise, in a neighborhood that no one will be doing anything like that at 2, 3 in the morning. The neighborhood there was no one around. It was, desert or a ghost town. Other people say it was a rift in time and you just saw the past. Well, this thing looked at us. It actually saw us and recognized there was something there, that we were there. So that kind of, I don't know if that could be it or not, but crazy experience.
And the whole crane thing, I understand that, because we do have some cranes here in Las Vegas, not as many as Florida, but when they are flying over, they have long legs. That's a trait that they have, and you can very easily tell that it is a crane, especially if they're overhead, by their long legs sticking out.
Yeah, it was. I would have the length of legs on a crane or a heron. You can see, even if it passes, you see a little bit of the leg, go by. The legs go by, but it was shorter. It was a shorter back to it. I don't know if it was. I always looked at pictures of pterosaurs, and some have tails, some have don't tails, and also size. I looked up sizes of pterosaurs, and I looked at the smallest size, and that's almost a sparrow size. The next size is way too big for what I saw. I don't know. Did it evolve during this time and change size? I have no idea. Also, the beach was close by, so I don't know if that is a factor why they were so close to that neighborhood. But there was definitely 2. The one across, and I tell myself I should have just ran to the backyard, because the backyard was overgrown. It was not taken care of, but it was dark. So I think that's what made my decision. I'm not going back there.
Right.
But today I'm like, man, I should have went back there. I was telling a friend, I would have jumped on it. I wouldn't care. Millions of dollars, man. That kind of deal. But at that time, I was like, I am not going back there to see what that was.
Especially if it was this rift in time that some people have postulated. What if there's a raptor back there? You don't want to screw with a raptor. There you go. I mean,
Exactly.
It was smart to stay in the front yard, man.
Exactly. Yeah, we were dumbfounded. We were like, it was the most mixed emotions that I went through. I've never felt like that before until I heard what I heard here in West Virginia one time.
Now, what was your friend saying? Now, you were the one that said pterodactyl, pterosaur, essentially a dinosaur, even though he didn't know, maybe those words very well. What was he saying about the sighting?
He was he was worse than me because at least I know what a pterodactyl was. He had nothing to. He might have said bat or something. I remember. He might have said something like that because its closest thing was a bat as far as the wings and the skin and no feathers and blah blah blah. But he had no frame of reference. He didn't know what pterodactyl was or pterosaur was. I said dinosaur, and he thinks T-Rex or whatever a T-Rex looks like. So he was confused more than I was. But yeah, he's like, I don't know. The thing also, years later, I was working at a supermarket in Florida, and I happened to see his mother. And right away I went to her. I'm like, hey, remember me? Because she was friends with my mom. And he goes, oh yeah. He moved back to Venezuela, which was disappointing because I wanted him to be, with me, saying, hey, this is real. And I mentioned that if he ever told her, mentioned the pterodactyl. I don't know what word I use. She's also a Spanish speaking lady. She said, oh yeah, you guys saw a big bird. I was like, a bird? He goes, yeah, he was telling me what it was, but it must have been a bird or something. Like, she didn't believe him. And he told her, she told me he described what it was or whatever, but she did. I was like, you guys just saw a bird. You guys are drunk or something, that kind of deal.
Now, what about, you said there was no noise. Were either one of these creatures actually flapping their wings actively as they were flying?
No, just gliding. I didn't see the wings flap once. The one we saw above us must have been a few inches above the rooftop. Like it was really close to, being a few inches down, it would have hit the awning or whatever, so it flew really close to it. It might have landed on the roof. I don't know, but I didn't hear anything. The one across the street did the same thing. It was only a few inches off the top of their roof or the point of their roof because the roof angled from front to back. So, yeah. And, yeah, no wing, no flapping, no nothing. No noise at all.
And I'm about as far away from Dr. Grant on Jurassic Park as one can get. So the fact that you said that you looked these up and the smallest ones are about the size of a sparrow, I didn't know that. That is fascinating, by the way.
It's a real tiny one, yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that. And then the bigger ones are way too big for what you saw. But if those were two juveniles, then maybe that's plausible, right?
Absolutely. I wouldn't see why not. If they're around, there has to be offspring, Yeah.
So Florida, though, Danny, where do you think now? There's a lot of things in Florida that live there that don't live anywhere else, and they have plenty of cover, food, water, everything. Where do you think something like this might be taking shelter out there in Florida?
Well, here's the thing. Like as far as shelter, I don't know, but they always depict them during the daytime flying around, and they were probably nocturnal. Or they adapted to be nocturnal. They had fly high enough. You don't see them at night, really. That's the mind-boggling thing because everybody, we would have been seeing them. They say that a lot about a lot of things that I know to be true. But I don't know where they can. There's no cliffs. There's no tunnels really or caves, unless maybe in Central Florida. I wouldn't even imagine where. They don't land on anything or a pole or very rarely do you see owls, but they're there, but you still see them. People still see them.
So, and this is me.
So I don't know.
This is me pulling from what you might have found in your research. Because again, I'm not really totally read up on specific dinosaur species. And, a lot of what we quote unquote know is conjecture, because let's face it, it's not Jurassic Park. We can't go study them. So do you think then that they could be dwelling in some of the larger trees? Are they nest builders? And this is all conjecture from the scientists, but did you read that about these things?
I don't think I've ever read on that, on nesting or anything. I don't think that, do they even know this? Like,
right.
Because they always
exactly.
show them on a kind of not a stalagmite, but the rocks sticking
Right.
out of the ground. They always show that depiction. I never,
And then
I
just
would
like a nest
assume-
for the eggs. That's kind of the pictures that we have as kids, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe off a cliff sides and stuff like that, like some birds do. But in Florida, where? I can't even, the only thing I can think of is burrowing. We got burrowing owls. They have gopher tortoises that burrow. That's the only thing I can think of. The tallest things there are buildings, downtown maybe. You know what I mean? So I don't know where they would be. I thought about this for years. Like, why hasn't anyone seen this? I saw them at night. If it was up in the sky higher, we wouldn't even know. Because like I said, herons fly at night, but the only time you see them is when they go over intersections.
Right.
With brightly lit intersections. But the herons are up there. The cranes are up there, but you don't know they're up there. So who knows?
I do like the fact that you brought up that, well, you just said it was at night, and if it was any higher, it was just because of the floodlight that you happened to catch this thing, and that you guys were even out there at 2 or 3 in the morning. There are a lot of, completely dark, very dark portions of Florida that people wouldn't be sitting and wouldn't see these things. So why do you think they would be even near your neighborhood? Were you near some kind of a, open swath of land? There's a lot of that in Florida, I understand, but was there a preserve near there where maybe they were going to get food or water, something like that?
Well, on the left side, about 2 miles away, on the left of where we were, there's a giant canal. A lot of trees around the canal, and on the right hand side of our neighborhood, in the neighborhood was a smaller canal that goes on for miles and miles, both of them. So that's one thing. Another thing, the beach is right by us. So I don't know if they fly over, ocean water and diving at fish or whatever, how they portrayed, So that's the only thing. I mean, there's a good place. There's gators there. 2 miles away in either direction, you can find some gators. Those gators are good. I would assume pterodactyl or pterosaur will find food, water, and all that stuff to survive.
And Danny, what about the eyes? When it flicked down I'm sure it was just milliseconds, but did you notice anything unique about the eyes when it looked at you?
Very small and beady. I didn't see eye color or anything. I just saw a dark area where the eyes should be or would be. But it was very small. It wasn't like large eye or owl eye or anything like that. It was a small, beady. It reminded me, I don't know if you look at a chameleon's eye in the middle, in the center, because their eyes are like on turrets, a chameleon. The center of the eye, that's what it kind of reminded me of.
Okay, the other thing I like is the fact that you brought up the bump on the head, because that is very characteristic of these guys. If you hadn't have seen that, do you think that it would have been easier to talk yourself out of the whole pterodactyl pterosaur thing?
I actually went through a stage years ago. I'm like, no, it couldn't be. No, it couldn't be. But I was like denying myself what I saw. I was like, no. And I was like, no, that's what we saw. I finally came to terms like, yes, that's what we saw. But yeah, the protrusion, the thing sticking out of his head, like it already looked like a pterosaur, but that solidified it for me. Like, oh, there's birds that have feathers growing out of a small protrusion on top of the head or whatever, but this was prominent. I mean, like I said, it was like half a pencil long. Same color as the rest of the body.
And it looked more like a bone, not like a feather.
No, it was a bone or whatever. It was it wasn't floppy or feathery or anything. It was a little thick. Yeah.
And this is kind of a silly question, but I guess it ties in with the same thing that I would ask of a Bigfoot encounter. As far as evidence, maybe the next day in daylight, was there any massive dino droppings anywhere. Birds, they poo a lot, so.
Believe it or not, all that happened was 2 or 3 days later, I saw him again, and we're like, what the heck was that? I don't know. And that was pretty much it. I kept thinking about it, but he was like, whatever.
Wait, 2 or 3 days later, you saw them again?
No, I saw my neighbor. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I saw my neighbor, my friend. Yeah.
Gotcha.
2 or 3 days later, I saw my neighbor, and it wasn't like I ran to his house like, hey, what the hell was that? No, it was, 2 or 3 days later when I saw him, we spoke, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what that was. That was weird. But it obsessed me. I was like, wait a minute, we just saw something that should not exist. And I looked like a weirdo because he was like, whatever,
Right.
But, yeah.
He was more on the denial side of things then.
I don't know if he was in denial or he was like, I'm not that familiar with the animal world kind of deal.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I think he was like, I don't know what it was, some animal, blah, blah, blah.
That's true.
But I knew what we were
guess
dealing with. I knew what we saw.
Right. If you don't have a lens of, okay, well, I'm trying to say that may be a crane, but I know that's not a crane, so it's not a crane, then you're looking at other options. Whereas if he's not familiar, he might be going, well, it's just a bird.
Yeah. And I want to add, ever since I was a child, my mother was really into birds, parrots, cockatiels, all that, for my whole life. And I know birds. And also, I've been in the pet industry for years. Maybe since I was 10, hanging around pet stores. That's my thing. I know animals. So I know what I saw does not exist. And I know what I saw looked exactly how pterosaurs are depicted.
How long do you think you saw that thing? When I talk about my shadow person encounter, I call it like a full 5 count, 1001, 1002, 1003. How long do you think you got to look at that thing?
All right. So I look up 2.5 seconds, maybe 3.
It's pretty long.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it before when it started to get into the light of the floodlight. Because the floodlight's facing down a little bit up. So you can see up the tree a bit. Something coming from the dark into that beam of light or whatever. That's when I saw it. So it was at a distance. That's what caught my eye. I looked up right before it hit before it passed the tree, hit the middle of the tree, and then went behind us, over us. So yeah, 2.5, 3 seconds, I'd say.
And you were kind enough to provide drawings, which I'm going to use the main drawing for the episode image, and then if you're okay with it, I would like to place the rest of the. You actually have the the GPS of the houses and where you guys were sitting and where these things were flying over, and if it's okay with you, I will place those in the show notes. But you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. It helped tremendously, actually. And now that you're talking about it, I can just it ties it all in basically. So thank you. But the other pterosaur or pterodactyl, you have a drawing of it flying away from you, and you guys will see in the main episode image that Danny drew. The wing shape is very distinct. And the wing shape in the one flying away from you looks exactly the same. It's just at a different angle. And it looks like you even maybe saw the protrusion on the back of that one's head for a second.
Yeah, it was further away. Absolutely. It was a house across the street. And I think the street light was helping more than our floodlight. I don't think my floodlight reached that far where the roof is of the other house. But yeah, we saw it flew away into the darkness. That one we saw less time, second and a half. But you can see either the head was popped up more and not streamlined, or the protrusion. Like I don't know if the head was streamlined with the body and we saw the protrusion, or the head was popped up and we saw the protrusion and some of the head. I don't know what it was, but yeah, there was streamline and then a bump in front of that.
Yeah, great renditions of these. So I encourage everybody to go to the website, intothefrayradio.com, and check those out. So how long was the beak on the one above you guys' head? Did you get a glance at maybe how long that was?
Yeah, You're looking at 4 or 5 inches, something like that. Maybe 4 or 5 inches. Might have been longer. It was so long ago. I mean, I drew those at 2008.
Oh, did you?
So, yeah, I'm gonna say like 4 or 5 inches,
Yeah,
something like that.
I just wonder where those guys were going. What were they doing out there? They didn't seem scared of you guys, or
No, unless it didn't notice us until it was right above us, because
right,
it
and then
did
it looked
just
down.
it
Right.
just it just clicked his head over, just looked at us real quick
Mm.
as it flew by.
Did that freak you out a little bit when it looked at you?
No, I was freaked out after. It was like it was so fast, and then like that was not a bird, or that's not normal. But the second you saw it, you're like, it's unreal. And then I looked across the street, and I don't know why I looked across the street. Honestly, I thought about it over the years, like, why didn't I look directly at my friend who was on my right? I looked across. I don't even know if he saw the one across the street. I don't remember the conversation that detailed, but I looked across the street, and that's when I saw the other one flying away. It was like a mirror image. It was like there was a mirror in the middle of the street, almost, where this one was coming at us, and the other one was going direct. It was like almost straight lines, like they separated at the same time. Does that make sense? They were doing the complete opposite flying direction and height.
Yeah, so were they coming down the street and then split like that? Or like,
It looked like
F-14s would do,
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see that where if they were flying, from left to right. But yeah, it was like they said, "Okay, see you later," and they both went their own direction. That's what it looked like. As far as it was amazing. It wasn't like one was flying at an angle. It was totally perfect, straight, height wise. They partied each other. I don't know. It was very strange. There's something I think about almost daily. It pops in my head at least once a day.
And would you like to see one or both of those guys again?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was no danger. I doubt they do any harm. But every day I wish I look up in the sky, and I'm not only looking for anything else up there. I'm always saying maybe I'll see one. Maybe I'll see another one. Where I live now, I probably doubt it. I don't know if they can live in cold weather, but yeah, I would love to see them again.
So, Danny, talking about, because it sounds like you've done a lot of research ever since then, and I do not blame you. You mentioned before we kind of officially started this whole pterodactyl out of the rock story that you came across. Can you retell that?
Yeah, I remember. It's a little unbelievable, the one part of it, but when I was a kid, I read that in France, they were digging tunnels for, I don't know, I don't remember what it was. I think it was like sanitation reasons or whatever. And they hit a rock wall, and out of the rock wall fell a big slab of rock, and there was a pterosaur. No bones, no fossils. It described it as black, oily skin like leather, and it actually made a sound. It screeched and then died. I read it in a crypto book I read in the library in school. Yeah, it was. I think you can find it still. I haven't looked up online about it, but I remember that story. Okay, so they were talking about the toads that people find in rocks and hollow rocks, alive, like adult toads, and that was part of it, where they found the live pterodactyl in a rock slab in France in 1830 something or 1852 or some crazy number like that. So yeah, and then a year later that happened. I totally did not believe that. Especially it screamed or screeched and then died. I was like, there's no way. But there might be some truth to that. Now that I think about it and what happened to me, I'm like, well, pterodactyls live longer than we say they did. See, they did, or scientists say they did.
So besides, when we're talking about like Champ or Nessie, if we're assuming that those are real things or even possibly remnants of dinosaurs of any time period, some might evolve. So then we have parrots because they said they are remnants of dinosaurs. So why would some of these guys be kind of stuck back in the day?
Well, these were pterosaurs were considered reptiles. For example, velociraptors and other dinosaurs, they evolved to be what we know as birds. But pterosaurs were considered reptiles. Like crocodiles were, at the time of pterosaurs, they were crocodiles or crocodile type. So crocodiles and alligators haven't evolved much. Maybe size-wise, they're smaller. But they're still crocodiles and alligators, and those are reptiles. So a different evolutionary track.
And how about in your readings, any other reports, even just the whole eastern seaboard, anywhere, actually, really, of sightings of people seeing these closely?
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Most sightings are in the west, Arizona, Texas, in more arid, dry areas. I mean, there is forests in both, but yeah, there was one where there was a man delivering, like he does the morning newspaper where he delivers newspapers, and he saw a pterosaur sitting on a big pterosaur, nothing like mine, huge, sitting on a telephone pole. But that's most. Never have I heard of a sighting in Florida. I've looked and looked and looked, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any. Just people might not say so. You know what I mean? Or you don't hear about it. They tell their friends, they tell their family,
right?
And you never hear of it. But most of them are there. And then we're talking. There's in Papua New Guinea the ropen or the ropen. There's a pterosaur that flies at night that has iridescence underneath their belly to attract fish up from the rivers and the lakes and whatever they got there. So there's sightings all the time. Like I said, I've never heard Florida. I've never seen a Florida sighting or read on one or found one. But yeah, there's sightings all the time.
Well, maybe once this airs, somebody will be brave enough like you to come forward and share their experience, right? That's what we're hoping.
That would be fantastic.
Yes.
I wouldn't feel so alone because you feel like a weirdo. And if that person wasn't next to me, saw the same thing, somebody put hallucinogenic gas in the air or something, I probably wouldn't even call or do this or tell anyone if I was by myself that night.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier to just pacify yourself and say, that was just something else. I was just in another mindset at the time.
Yeah. He confirmed it that it's real, and then he confirmed it. I mean, we looked at each other, dinner plate eyes, like what? We looked at each other at the same exact time. We turned our heads at each other, like what was that? And he was amazed, but then 2-3 days later he was like, whatever. I was so frustrated.
You mentioned interesting sounds, and these sounds though happened where you're living now.
Yes, I'm living in Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah, you want to chat about that?
3 years. Yeah, I mean it's not a giant story, but I moved here around 3 years ago. And I live, it's like a 15 minute drive from Kanawha State Forest. So if I look at Google Maps, see my house, it's a straight shot to this forest. And from the forest, from that area, I have a creek that runs right by my house, goes around my house and towards the front of my house and just keeps on going. And there's a drop off. Right when I walk out of my house is a drop off of forest into the creek. So I'm really close to, I'm in a wooded area. So 2 or 3 days after I move here, and you can imagine there's not a lot of light, just looking at silhouette of trees. And I'm smoking a cigarette outside of my house. My back is maybe about 5-6 feet away from my front door. I'm on a porch and or a deck, right? And I hear, and I'm gonna say it this way: I heard the Ohio howl. I don't know if anyone's the Ohio howl. If you look it up, it was recorded by Matt Moneymaker, and it was exactly and I've heard the Ohio howl before I heard this. Even with the local dogs barking in response to it, just like in the recording of the Ohio howl, it was exactly. I'm going to imitate it. It's going to be hilarious, but I'll do it. It was like this. And at the end, it sounded it didn't sound, I'll let you know. It goes, and at the end is what got me. Because at the end was very like a voice. And I was like, what the? And I flicked my cigarette, and I backed up into the door, opened the door, came in, and I was terrified and elated at the same time. I had a huge smile on my face because I've always wanted to see a Sasquatch. I didn't see one, but I heard it. I was so happy, but I was like, I'm not going out there until morning. Yeah, it was amazing. There was not a person. The lungs were you can hear I can't even. There's no way I can come close to it. But if you hear the Ohio howl, it was that. And then the dogs right after the howl, all over the neighborhood. So I was amazed. And then I looked up sirens. So I was like, maybe it was a tornado siren or they're testing sirens. And I found out that they only test a certain time of the year, and it wasn't that. And they test at a certain time, and it wasn't that. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. No, it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. Yeah, I found out that it was not a siren, and that end voice-like sound, that got me. I was like, that was a Sasquatch.
And this can be really hard to distinguish, but did that sound like it was really far from you or quite close?
Well, with these mountains all around, the echoing and there could be a sound across the street and you hear it behind you.
Right.
You know? So, but to me, it seemed like the direction of Canal State Forest. It was to me, and I had a house behind me, so I don't know if that makes a difference as far as acoustics. But yeah, it sounded like it was that direction, but they could be anywhere. Cause I'll tell you one more thing. Maybe a year ago, we parked the car. My front door, you got to walk up a little bit. So, park the car, we close it. Across the street is there's houses, but there's also a mountain behind the house. There's even houses on top of the mountain that you can see through the trees. There are lights, there's window lights. But it's a very steep mountain going up. As I'm walking up the hill, I hear a whoop. I hear a whoop. It sounded very monkeyish. Just one little whoop, whoop, like that. And it could be something, but it could be something else. But it sounded like if you go to the zoo and you hear that whoop,
right.
I can't do it. But yeah, and that's probably the extent of what I heard as far as that goes.
Well, I've been to West Virginia several times, and Seth and I have both agreed, because it's usually with Seth that I'm going to West Virginia to film. I mean, it's one of our favorite states because it's just so mountainous and so wooded, and it's gorgeous. Yeah. And for a Bigfoot, something like a Bigfoot, it would be just one of the perfect places to be.
Heaven. Sasquatch heaven. And here no one wants, they won't talk about it. So Who knows how many people encounter, I don't know what you're talking about. I ask people and they're like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, you know what Bigfoot is? They're like, yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, they're like, they
don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, they don't even want to, they won't even admit that they know what it is. It's much like Lyle Blackburn. took him years going to Falk, Arkansas to get those folks to talk to him, right? So
yeah. They won't. Here in West Virginia, everyone likes it to be like, leave us alone. We have our own thing here, that kind of deal. You know, it's a state where they're proud of their state, but they don't like intrusion of other. I don't know how to explain it. Like they wouldn't want cameras here, news and all crazy. They don't want us. They don't want to be on the news. They don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're over here. Don't worry about us. We're doing our thing. So for them to speak about this out loud and make a big deal about it, I doubt it would ever happen.
Love that state so much. It's not great if you're prone to car sickness. If you're on a long trip within the state, though, I will say that. But because of all the windy roads.
I'm not a roller coaster person, but some of these roads here are terrifying. Yes,
if you're like, no texting and driving, folks, in West Virginia, you know.
Yeah. I'm yelling like, why doesn't it have a barrier? We could fall right off. What the hell is this?
Yeah, or the barrier.
It's a little scary when you're not from here.
Yeah, or the barrier may as well be just like a plastic straw just set up in the road. Exactly. You're like, why is this? Why are you even bothering? I don't even know why this is here. This wouldn't hold a bike.
It's a little treacherous, yes.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on. I promise you, I'll get in touch if I get any correspondence. That is for sure. But if you hear or see anything else, please get in touch with me. But guys out there, please consider getting in touch. Even if it's not for coming on the show like Danny has done, just get in touch and say, here's my encounter, share it with Danny. I'm fine with that even. It doesn't even have to be for the show. I've said this many a times. It's not always about that. It's about sharing the information. And I'm sure Danny is very hungry to hear other people have seen these things. So get in touch with me, Shannon at endofthefrayradio.com, or I'm all the social media aspects if you want to do that as well. But Danny, thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your sighting.